So with the release of Chapter 4 of Boruto's 2 Blue Vortex, we finally found where Sasuke is after the time skip. And fortunately for a lot of people watching this video, that's not 6 feet under. You see, because there was a lot of speculation about where Sasuke would end up. Would he be dead? Would he be in some alternate dimension? Would he be training somewhere? Would he be with the Toads, Mount Mubuko? Would he be trapped in a tree? All of these theories flew around until eventually one theory made a whole lot more sense than all the other theories. And that was that Sasuke's in a tree. But we've already discussed that and I've already taken my victory lap. So why are we still talking about it? Well, mostly because there's a pretty big difference between knowing where Sasuke is and knowing how to save him. See, of course, we all know for a fact that Sasuke is locked up in a failed divine tree and that Boruto and Kashin Koji are using that area as their hideout. Now, as to whether or not that tree's in Mount Mubuko or some other dimension where Boruto and Kashin Koji are safe from intruders, we simply don't know. But like I've already said, knowing Sasuke's location in his situation does not mean we know how to save him. See, obviously it appears as though Boruto and Kashin Koji believe the best way to save Sasuke would be to cut down his Shinju, the divine tree manifestation that happened after Sasuke was bitten by a claw grime. Longbang Chidori using divine tree. And while none of this is ever outright said, it is heavily implied by the plot, as Kashin Koji, through the medium of his communicator toad, told Boruto the second that both Boruto and the toad laid eyes on this Sasuke Shinju, that Boruto needs to seize the moment and cut him down. And thus it became relatively clear to us that in order to save Sasuke, we have to kill his manifestation, is at least what we believe at this current moment. However, some evidence has come to shine on the fact that that may not actually be the way to save Sasuke. And not only is that not the way to save Sasuke, but by killing Sasuke's Shinju manifestation, that actually might put Sasuke's life in danger. And thus, in actuality, the real way to save Sasuke actually lies in the hands, or rather, the eyes of his daughter. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about the possibility that Sarada's newfound MS abilities will be the key to saving her father. And everybody else has also been bitten by a claw grime, but mostly her father, which is why today we're talking Sarada's MS will save Sasuke. But before we get to talking about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you guys want to hear me explore theories from your other favorite anime and manga, go ahead and explore my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where I talk all other anime and manga not named Boruto or Naruto. Or if you just want to hear me talk about anime in general, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you just want to look like somebody who talks about anime, go ahead and meander on over into my anime merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So Sasuke is now one of the bad guys. Well, that's not necessarily true. Sasuke's manifested spirit, chakra, and abilities are one of the bad guys, in the form of a divine tree or a Shinju that's now going to be one of the main antagonists of this upcoming Boruto arc. And thus Sasuke is essentially, once again, a part of the new Akatsuki, or I guess the new Kara, since it says Boruto. And in the first instance that we got to see this new iteration of Sasuke as a bad guy once again, Boruto tried to jump him. Well, to be more specific, Kashin Koji told Boruto to jump Sasuke, like it was the most important thing going on in this massively dangerous situation. However, considering the fact that all 4 of the Shinju were incredibly powerful, and Sasuke was definitely one of the more powerful amongst them, because Boruto hesitated after seeing Sasuke's Shinju, he wasn't able to succeed in killing it. Now, because Kashin Koji and Boruto seem to put so much importance on killing this Sasuke Shinju, and the fact that after Boruto returns to his hideout, he tells Sasuke he's gonna have to wait a little while longer, it's been all but unanimously agreed upon that if Boruto was successful in dispatching of Sasuke's manifestation, more likely than not, the claw grime that bit Sasuke would unbite him to some degree. However, we don't know that for sure. In fact, one could very easily make an argument that that's not the case. So you could just as easily make an argument that Boruto and Kashin Koji believed that jumping the Sasuke Shinju was the most important thing to do in the situation when all 4 of the Shinju showed themselves to Boruto and Code, because both Boruto and Kashin Koji are fully aware of how powerful a Sasuke Shinju could be. Because as we've already seen, the Shinju retain the appearance and abilities of the people people that they're manifested from. And considering the fact that Sasuke at one point was the second most powerful entity in the entirety of Naruto's universe, means you really don't want him as an enemy. And therefore Boruto and Kashinkoji could be prioritizing eliminating the highest value target early. That way they don't have to deal with Sasuke backing up the other Shinju. But this argument does get a little muddied down in the fact that Boruto, when he returned unsuccessful in killing Sasuke Shinju, did tell Sasuke you'll have to hold on a little bit longer. The other argument you can make as to why Boruto decided to jump Sasuke Shinju first has a somewhat more personal explanation, as Boruto and Kashinkoji could be trying to kill Sasuke Shinju because Sasuke Shinju technically besmirches Sasuke's somewhat good name. Okay name. It's fine. His name, it's fine. It's rising, but it's not very high to begin with. And thus, because Boruto and Kashinkoji don't want something that looks like Sasuke running around destroying the worlds, they want to get rid of Sasuke Shinju. However, if you were to argue either of these two explanations as to why Boruto would try to jump Sasuke Shinju, I would tend to disagree with you because both of these explanations don't do a whole lot for moving the plot forward. And if Boruto was trying to destroy the strongest Shinju first, he probably should have focused on the Shinju that is very clearly the leader, a Shinju that might have used the lingering chakra of Jigen that existed in the Ten Tails to re-manifest Jigen in a stronger form. Because not only is he undoubtedly the leader of the Shinju, but he would also be way stronger than Sasuke, as Jigen in an unhealthy, incomplete vessel form absolutely dog-walks Sasuke multiple times. And once again, Boruto attacking Sasuke to let his soul rest doesn't really move the plot forward in any meaningful capacity. But since I've seen these arguments being made online, I figured it was best to mention them. So all in all, I do genuinely believe that both Boruto and Kashinkoji believe that if they cut down Sasuke Shinju, Sasuke will be freed from the tree. Which leads us to the incredibly logical question, is that the only way to free people from the claw grimes that bit them? Do you have to wait until the claw grimes manifest the Shinju and then cut that Shinju down in order to save the person who that Shinju is manifested from? And if you do, wouldn't that be incredibly tedious? Because it appears as though the Shinju have just come onto the scene, which is somewhat perplexing when you consider the fact that Sasuke was more likely than not bitten by a claw grime 2 years ago, and it's a possibility that Bug was bitten even before Sasuke, which means in the case of people like Bug, it might take over 2 years for your Shinju to manifest. Or is it just something that Code did recently that caused all of these people who are bitten by claw grimes to immediately manifest Shinju? We don't really know, and thus the idea of waiting on these Shinju to manifest from people who are bitten by claw grimes and then cutting those Shinju down seems like a pretty terrible way to try and break people out of trees, especially when you consider the fact of how many people can be bitten by claw grimes and how powerful their Shinju are. Getting sweaty and gray shirts aren't great for that. So now if the only way to free people from divine trees is to wait for their Shinju to manifest and then cut those incredibly powerful foes down, it really makes the idea of any rate of success seem almost impossible in Boruto, which, considering the fact that the Konoha is fully destroyed in chapter 1 and episode 1 of Boruto, I guess isn't the craziest thing. When you consider the fact that somebody like Bug, somebody with no ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, or any ninja training whatsoever, is so powerful as a Shinju, he was able to press Boruto, a person who next to no diffed Code without his limiters. That means if you look at linear power scaling, that Bug in his Shinju form is probably somewhere around a Kaguya level threat, waiting for each and every single person who was ever bitten by a claw grime to turn into a Shinju that then has to be cut down. Just simply doesn't seem realistic. And the next very logical follow-up question to is that the only way to save people from the divine trees is what happens when you cut their Shinju down? Would the claw grime that bit you and then turn into a divine tree turn back into a singular claw grime? Would the tree wither and die, releasing you to freedom? Or would both the claw grime and the person within the failed divine tree kick the bucket? Well, of these three possibilities, I genuinely believe that the first two are the most likely for plot necessities. I'm genuinely not counting out the third option. See, because while I know the official translations of Boruto have changed their names from Shinju to Divine Trees, which I hate, that doesn't change the fact that in Japanese, they're referred to as Shinju, which is the Japanese word for multiple people taking their lives simultaneously, which is where I got the original theory that if they were cut down, both they and the person whose personality, abilities, and chakra they took would die together. But this brings us to an impasse, because Sasuke's in one of those trees, and so is Moegi, probably. And so is Bug. Because we're worried for you, bud. Genuinely, if I'm being incredibly real right now, I believe that Bug and Moegi's death would register at the same level of sadness for me. Now, if he took Udon, I'd actually be very happy. His snot bubble ninjutsu makes me very uncomfortable. Anyways, moving back to the idea of what happens when you kill a Shinju, I can't help but wonder how Boruto and Kashinkoji even know how to release people from failed divine trees. Have they already done it? Because it appears as though the Shinju appearing at Kara's hideout and stealing the Ten Tails was the first thing they did, as they made it very clear that they were now around and present to Code, who technically created them, something that they hadn't done previously, as Code didn't know they existed. And while I do think it is a somewhat high possibility that Kashin Koji and Boruto in the 2 years that they were together did come across a Shinju and maybe did cut said Shinju down, as Boruto, when he was talking to Code, seemed to have some understanding of the horror of the Ten Tails and how Code's transformations of the Claw Grimes made them into monsters beyond his control. And genuinely, Boruto probably wouldn't have had that information without at one point coming across a Shinju. And this makes double sense when you consider the fact that I believe Code started making Ten-Tailed soldiers or Claw Grimes in like chapter 70 of Boruto, which means he's at least had this walking army for 3 years. However, we're not entirely sure if Code altered these Claw Grimes to have the abilities they currently have as he made them, or if he made a standing army and then altered them down the line. So while it is a possibility that Boruto and Kashin Koji at some point or another did stumble upon a Shinju that was manifested by a Claw Grime biting somebody random and killed that Shinju and freed that random person, we just don't know that yet. And since the idea of every single person that's ever been bitten by a Claw Grime and then turned into a divine tree creating a Shinju that's a Kaguya level threat that somehow Boruto, Kawaki, Mitsuki, and Sarada have to cut down by themselves, just doesn't seem like something that's even accomplishable considering the fact of how powerful Bug Shinju is. I have to assume there's another way, and that other way lies in the eyes of Sarada. See, I believe that Boruto and Kashin Koji do believe that the only way to free the people in these divine trees is to cut down their manifestations. But the reason that they believe that is because they don't know the true way to free these people from the trees. Or at least they don't know the most efficient, most practical, and safest way to remove these people from the trees. And that's because technically this safe, efficient, and practical way to remove people from trees hasn't been revealed yet. Not to us, and definitely not to Boruto or Kashin Koji. See, if you're anything like me, you've been waiting with bated breath for the moment that Sarada would be relevant in Boruto's timeline. And while she has had a couple of incredible moments like her Chidori against Boro or the awakening of her MS, we're still waiting on her to capitalize on these incredible moments. Most important of which is her awakening her MS at the end of Boruto. Now, the crazy thing about Sarada awakening her MS pre-time skip is that she's had 3 years to work on her Sharingan abilities. And while it's not like Sarada has anybody around to teach her how to use these MS abilities, and while it's not like you can really practice MS abilities, and even if you could, that wouldn't necessarily be advisable because, you know, eyesight, which she's already lacking in, it would be crazy to assume that Sarada doesn't at least know what her MS abilities are. Because not only has every other person in the history of the MS known what their MS abilities are almost instantly, as literally the second Obito awoke his combo, not only did he know the name of the ability, but also figured out how to use it like that. It would stand to reason that Sarada is in a similar camp. So while she hasn't been fine-tuning her MS abilities because she would just make herself blinder, she should know what they are and how to use them. And if she doesn't, well, that would just confirm everything that I know about Kishimoto's writing style and how it pertains to women. Got an email today and somebody was like, hey, I'm watching Naruto for the first time. Can't help but notice that Sakura and Tsunade, crazy powerful. Why aren't they sages when everybody else around them are sages? And I literally just had to break down to this person the concept of sexism. Sometimes the answer you're looking for is shockingly simple. But assuming that Kishimoto has learned a thing or two in his last decade of writing, maybe, just maybe, we're going to be seeing some changes in his writing style. Therefore, when we see Sarada's MS abilities, of which I've talked about what they could possibly be multiple times in multiple videos, but I'll quickly go over what I believe at least one of her MS abilities are going to be, which is that I believe at least one of her MSs is going to be an Amaterasu clone. But instead of the black flames of Amaterasu that burn you until you turn to ash, or the user decides to turn them off, Sarada would instead have golden flames that when they come into contact with somebody's body, heal said body and burn out the darkness inside their heart, pacifying them. That is to say, instead of her Amaterasu flames burning and destroying, they heal and help. This is mostly to do with the fact that MS abilities are a mirror to the personality of the person at the point that they awoke these MS abilities. That is real canon information. And therefore, those who awoke in Amaterasu were walking embodiments of the cycle of hatred within the Uchiha, a black burning flame that had lived inside of the clan ever since the clan's creation. A flame that would burn forever until whoever it came into contact with turned to ashes or let it go. The symbology is not that complicated, and thus the Amaterasu is an eye awoken by those who are still in the cycle of hatred. However, because Sarada is a literal physical manifestation of the cycle of hatred being broken because she was able to awaken her Sharingan and her MS through love and not hatred, I believe that Sarada's MS abilities will be different from anything we've ever seen before. And since it is also canon information that the darker your heart, the darker your Susanoo, it's not crazy to extrapolate that the darker your heart, the darker your flames. And therefore, since Sarada is inarguably the purest of heart Uchiha we've ever had, it's not crazy to assume that her flames and possibly her Susanoo would be either golden or pink. Listen, I know, don't give the girl a pink Susanoo, but think about it. And when you tie all of this into the fact that Amaterasu appears to be genetic because both Itachi and Sasuke got it, it would make sense that Sarada would get Amaterasu, but because she's not in the cycle of hatred and she's the symbol of the breaking of that cycle, her Amaterasu would heal. So what if the real way the Sarada finds relevancy in this upcoming Boruto arc isn't by being a universe-busting entity that's cutting Shinju in half, but instead as the key to unlocking the gate that is failed divine trees wrapping themselves around important people from around the world. And the way that that key works is that Sarada uses her possibly golden or possibly pink flames to burn away said divine trees and free those within. As one could absolutely make the argument that the divine tree wrapped around these people is damage, and therefore a healing flame would not only work very well with the idea of burning away the wood, but also work very well with the idea of healing these people from what's currently ailing them. Tie this into the fact that Sarada's healing Amaterasu has the ability to burn out the darkness in your heart and pacify you, that this ability to reach somebody's emotions and pacify them could have a direct effect on the Shinju, who are manifestations of their emotions, abilities, and chakra. That is, if the Shinju were somehow able to survive Sarada burning away their trees. And narratively, and from a plot perspective, this makes a lot of sense. See, a couple of weird things have already happened in Boruto that have caused people like me to start taking notes. The first weird thing is that Sarada is saved from becoming a failed divine tree herself by Soegi, a background character of no regard. And on top of this, Sarada was the person who made the initial realization that the people inside of the failed divine trees were still alive. Now, the current explanation as to why Sarada was the person to make this announcement is because they wanted to explain it to us as the audience. In that way, when we saw Sasuke Shinju and saw Sasuke in a tree, we knew he was still alive. And technically, all that information coming from Sarada is a good tie-in to it affecting Sasuke. And while I don't hate that theory, I really don't. In fact, I believe that that is at least partially the reason that all of that happened. What if the real reason it happened is to give Sarada a reason to be upset about these divine trees, as she herself was saved from the fate of the Clawgrime's bite by the sacrifice of another. And therefore, Sarada feels morally indebted to the likes of Soegi, which sets her down the path of trying to figure out how to free him. Not to mention that Sarada was also the person responsible for explaining the gravity of the situation with the Clawgrimes to both Kawaki and Shikamaru, cementing her as the person with all the information as it pertains to the Clawgrimes in Konoha. And thus now, not only does Sarada have a moral obligation to try and get Soegi out of the divine tree, but also possibly the means to do so. And on top of all of this, it would explain once again why Boruto hasn't explained anything to Sarada. Most specifically, the fact that Sasuke himself is in a failed divine tree. See, from an in-universe perspective, the reason that Boruto hasn't told Sarada anything is most likely because he feels shame about putting Sasuke in a situation where he got bit by a Clawgrime. And thus, much in the same way that Sarada feels morally responsible for Soegi, Boruto feels morally responsible for Sasuke. However, in-universe explanations of certain situations are usually not enough. But if you look at this theory as fact, the outside perspective as to why Boruto wouldn't tell Sarada, one of his only trusted comrades left on Earth, about the gravity of the situation and everything that was going on with Sasuke, there's a possibility that when Sarada is brought to Sasuke or Moegi or Bug's tree, that she would figure out that she could use her MS ability to free them. And thus, in order to make sure that this arc progresses, we have to have Boruto and Kashin Koji going about defeating the Shinju in their way, while Sarada very much follows the footsteps of her mother and tries to take a scientific approach to finding a way to healing all of those affected by Clawgrime bites on a mass scale. Because if hypothetically we were able to get rid of the Shinju through the medium of Sarada using her MS ability on the trees that were formed, that means that Konoha as a whole wouldn't have to battle against every single Shinju ever created, all of which are somewhere around Kaguya level threats. And thus we can get plot development for both Sarada and Boruto without introducing an impossible feat. And by coming together, they can bring forward the end of this arc. And because both Boruto and Sarada are unaware of Sarada's ability to do this, it will take some time in order for either of them to become aware. And when they do become aware, the Shinju themselves will also most likely become aware, and thus the Shinju will more likely than not get territorial over the failed divine trees that created them. In the tail end of this arc, we'll focus on Boruto and Sarada and Kashin Koji and the rest of the crew trying to get to these trees to destroy them. And now, if hypothetically all this happens, not only does Sarada have plot relevance, but this also serves as a perfect opportunity to reveal the powers and scope of her MS abilities. And maybe more importantly than anything, this moment could operate as a chance to show us the new generation saving the old, as Sarada and Boruto would work collaboratively to save Sasuke. And since there is a possibility that Sarada uses her healing Amaterasu to burn away these divine trees, it's a possibility that those saved through these means because of the Ten Tails chakra and the healing Amaterasu come out fully healed, which is the theory we've been building our way towards ever since Sasuke was revealed in the Divine Tree. As Sasuke in the Divine Tree very clearly only has two parts of his body out, his right arm and his right working eye, which means his destroyed Rinnegan and his lost arm are in the Divine Tree. And therefore, there is a strong possibility that Sarada, through the power of her healing Amaterasu as she's burning away Sasuke's cage, heals his body entirely, reintroducing Sasuke into power and plot relevancy, which would allow for Sasuke, Kashin Koji, Boruto, Sarada, and Mitsuki to launch a counter-offensive against the likes of Kawaki, Code, and possibly Shibai. And since the biggest underlying plotline throughout the entirety of Boruto is trust in those around you, Boruto, Sarada, and Sasuke coming together to battle against the likes of Kawaki, who doesn't trust in the likes of Naruto and Hinata to protect themselves from the likes of the Otsutsuki, could serve as a turning point for Kawaki, realizing that Boruto has become stronger than Kawaki through the trust he has in the people around him, which would serve as a parallel for what Sasuke went through. And since there are a massive amount of parallels between Kawaki and Sasuke, this would make sense. But what do I know? I'm just the guy who gets on a call with Kishimoto every single week and then signs an NDA, so he has to say everything that Kishimoto tells him through the medium of theories. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that Sarada could find some plot relevance in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex through the medium of newfound MS abilities? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. I don't do that, by the way. Is at least legally what I have to tell you.